Man, it's good to be back. Last week, I was out of town preaching in the Atlanta area, and it was hot, and there was a lot of traffic. Man, Atlanta knows how to stack it with traffic. We spent most of the time in traffic, but the camp was phenomenal. Got to preach to about 650 teenagers and about 250 young adults that were there, and God moved in a powerful way. About 70 kids raised their hand to accept Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior. It was just a powerful weekend, and but anytime that I might be gone preaching somewhere else or doing something like that, if I ever miss on a Sunday, we want to make sure that our church does not go unfed. And how many of you know you got fed with Pastor Manny Arango last week? Come on, Uncle Manny. We're so grateful for him, and if you missed it, go back and watch the message. I watched it. I tuned in online, and it was a phenomenal time. If you do not want to miss it, and man, we're so grateful. It's pretty cool too. One thing you may not know: when he comes in, he's not just even preaching on the Sunday. But he's in our staff meeting. He's encouraging our team. He's bringing leadership stuff, helping move the church forward, bringing wisdom to our church, and even just to me as a friend of his. It's so amazing that he was able to come in this summer. But I've got a word, and we're going to start a brand new series today out of the Book of Jonah, and so we're just going to call it what it is. We're going to call the series the Book of Jonah. And you're like, Pastor Sam, that's not very creative. I just think it makes sense, okay? We're going to call it the Book of Jonah, and this actually came because I wanted to preach the story of Jonah in our Stories of the Bible series. I really did, and I realized there's no way to do this in a week. There's just no way. There's too much, and there's a lot of backfilling that I want to do, a lot of teaching that I want to do, and educating each and every one of us. I've done an immense amount of study over the last couple weeks preparing for this because I want us to approach this book and this text correctly. I want us to approach what this story is trying to tell us, but the problem is many of us, we come in. How many of you are familiar with what happens in the book of Jonah? How many of you guys are familiar with the book of Jonah in some way? And when I say Jonah, how many of you think of the whale right away? You think of the whale. Jonah and the whale. That's the story. It's not the book of Jonah. It's Jonah and the whale. Why didn't you call it Jonah and the whale, Pastor Sam? Why aren't we focused on the whale? The reality is the whale is an amazing moment within this story, but it is not the point of the story at all. And if we actually put that as the central theme to the story, we're going to completely misconstrue what this story is trying to tell us. And part of that comes from, if we're being really, really honest, and I'm just going to suggest this idea, it seems like the American church in particular struggles with this book because Jonah is not a hero. He's not a hero. He fails. And he disobeys, and he doesn't listen, and he gets intense, and he disobeys over and over again. He's not a hero. He's not the kind of guy that we want to be. And then the problem is that actually the Ninevites are the people that we would want to call evil. We'd want to call them dark. We'd want to call them bad. Like they literally would skin enemies alive, peel the skin off their flesh. We're like, those are the bad guys. Those are the evil ones. And Jonah is a prophet of God. He's supposed to be the hero, and the Ninevites are supposed to be the villain. That's how this works. And because in America, how many of you know, we are the Hollywood generation, and we love our heroes, and we love our villains, and we want it to make sense, right? Don't mess with the heroes, and don't mess with the villains. Don't give me these anti-heroes, Marvel, okay, in DC, with their Black Adam movie for the nerds. They're like, don't give me the anti-hero. I want heroes, and I want villains. But this book is not written that way. And then the really challenging part is actually, if you study Scripture, you're understanding that the Word of God is trying to say, hey, often you are Jonah. You are Jonah. For those of you who accepted Jesus and you've stepped up to serve God, you actually are more like Jonah, and there are lost people out there, the Ninevites. And so it's a tough book to approach in that context. Another thing that makes this book difficult, it is completely different than every other books of the prophets. It's entirely different. Every other book of the prophet is a prophet's words to God's people. So it's the words that he is speaking on behalf of God to God's people. So I'm a prophet. Here's my declaration. I write it down. Usually it has something to do with change your behavior, change what you're doing, come back to God, or there'll be a consequence. And that's usually how it goes. But Jonah is a book that's written about a prophet. It's not words from a prophet. It's a story about a prophet. So it's very unique in nature. And then on top of it, there's a lot of sometimes even controversy among Christian scholars around. Are you guys okay if I kind of backfill? Are you okay if I teach for just a moment before we preach? Is this okay? You guys getting real quiet, and that's okay. But I just want, hopefully you're with me here. I'm like a little bit of a closet Bible nerd, and it's growing, and I'm getting more and more passionate about this stuff. But I don't want us to approach a book of the Bible ever in church and try to make it do something that it was never designed to do. And so that's where you get bad theology. Sometimes that's where you actually get spiritual abuse in the church, is we misuse verses. And when you misuse a verse, especially in a form of discipleship, it's really hurtful for people. It can be really condemning for people. So we have to be cautious that we understand what the Bible's trying to do. And did you know that within the Bible, there are all of these books, and they're written in different forms? We've got poetry. We've got songs. We've got historical texts. We've got, in Jonah, it's actually written in the form of more satire than historical. There's all of these different forms, and you need to know how it was written, why it was written, and who it was written to. Because yes, God inspired the author. We believe in the inspired word of God at Artisan Church, but the reality is there was an intention with each book. And if every book was written the same and we approached it the same, we'd all be bored with the Bible and we'd be done with it already. The beautiful thing is God made it so unique, so incredible, and it has so much depth that we can pull from it. And we have to, church, we have to be excited about the Bible. We have to be excited about the Bible. But if we stay at Sunday school level, we won't be. If I come up here and I preach about Jonah and the whale, and I do a Sunday school message, and we leave it at that, and we don't actually dive into the complexities of this text or what it's trying to do, that's going to really damage our view on the Bible, actually. And I believe that today some of us are going to get really excited about what the word could be. So it's written in a way that there's actually, did you know the Book of Jonah, if you study Hebrew literature, it's actually written with comedy in there? So the satire aspect is actually, there's comedy. They exaggerate, they're really pushing pieces of the story. They're focusing on the extreme parts of the story. It's really short. And satire, if you know, it's often written about real people, real places, actual events, but using humor to address an issue there. SNL is famous for this. Come on, Saturday Night Live people, you're like, we don't talk about SNL in church. Okay, let's just picture if Will Ferrell wrote a book of the Bible, okay? So if Will Ferrell wrote a book of the Bible, he would use humor. He would tell a story like, you can't say that in church, pastor. Say, well, there's humor in it. And hopefully you understand the illustration, that there's a piece where someone's approaching this very real story, but they're doing it in a way that helps you to see the humor. And the Hebrews that would have been reading this would have seen the humor. Now, it's different than humor in our day, but we're going to point out a few pieces of it, okay? And why would there be humor in the Bible? God can't be funny. God can't see humor. God's not funny. God's intense. God is angry, especially the God of the Old Testament. He murders people. He's the angry God in the Old Testament. He was angry in the Old Testament, and he's nice in the New Testament, and he's grace, and he's happy, and he's good. No, he's the same. Yesterday, today, and forever. The God of the Old Testament is the God of the New Testament, and he's the same. His relationship to humans is different. Actually, did you know the story of the book of Jonah is not about even Jonah, it's about God's heart for humanity. The entire story is about the fact that God loved the Ninevites. That's what the story's about, and yet what it shows is, hey, God loves the Ninevites, but yet God's people continues to get stubborn and doesn't go after and reach them. So we are God's people. If you are saved, if you've accepted Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, repented, and chose to make him Lord of your life, you are God's people, and there are lost people out there, and the reality is, if you haven't struggled with reaching lost people yet, you haven't been saved very long. At some point, there's going to be somebody you encounter that's like, man, that's hard to reach them. That's hard to talk to them. I don't really connect with them. There's going to be a day and an age where that happens. So here's this incredible, true story that's in Jonah, but it's written in a way that is so beautiful and gives us a unique book and a unique text that even Jesus himself talks about. Do you know Jesus talks about the book of Jonah? He actually says that the Ninevites that were saved are actually going to be there on Judgment Day, so we know the Ninevites were real. He talks about Jonah actually being in the belly of the whale is an example of him being underground for 3 days, so we know that that happened according to Jesus. So this is a real book, but it's written in a way that adds humor in. There's a comedic aspect to it. It's written in that style. And so in Matthew 12:40, we see Jonah's real when Jesus talks to him. In 2 Kings 14, Jonah is also talked about during the reign of Jeroboam II. So he's the second Jeroboam. Jeroboam the first was at that point the worst king, the most evil king in the eyes of God that Israel had ever had. And then Jeroboam II decided to be even worse. And Jonah was famous for prophesying prosperity over an evil king. So he prophesied this prosperity and this expanding of the borders over Jeroboam. And then Amos actually comes back and denounces that prophecy and actually speaks over consequences for his actions. So Jonah's kind of famous for being a failed prophet. He's kind of famous for not being a really good guy. He's kind of famous. So here the author's helping us understand this. And in Jonah chapter 1, verse 1, we're going to start right at the beginning. We're going to read a little bit more. I sent them only through verse 7, but I'm actually going to read through verse 9. But we're going to see this. We're going to dive into this story. So this is sort of the backdrop. Here we have this prophet who does not have a very good reputation already. He's going in, and the Lord decides, I'm going to use Jonah. He's still a prophet. I'm going to use him. And so he gives him a message to Jonah, which means dove. Right here at the beginning, there's comedy, son of Amittai, which means faithfulness. And so Jonah is the exact opposite of a dove that is faithful. A dove, which is often, it shows the Spirit of God. It actually brings peace. Dove is a sign of peace and faithfulness. Peace and faithfulness. This is not a peaceful guy, and this is anything but a faithful person. So right out of the gate, the author's using humor here. Get up and go to the great city of Nineveh. Announce my judgment against it, because I have seen how wicked its people are. But Jonah got up and went in the opposite direction. He went in the opposite direction to get away from the Lord. He went down to the port of Joppa, where he found a ship leaving for Tarshish. Now this is another part. They're using the extreme. When it says opposite direction, it wasn't like kind of. This is literally the exact opposite direction. And Tarshish would have been humorous to the readers because it was the furthest known point on their maps. There was no further place that they were aware of that he could have gone to. So he literally goes, I'm going to go in the opposite direction to the furthest possible place. So it's like, it would have been some kind of phrase like Timbuktu, right? Where it's like he's going to the middle of nowhere. He is going to where nobody wants to go. So he's saying, I would rather go and hide on the furthest point of society and civilization in the known world than to obey God and go to Nineveh. I want to go to the furthest part. The ship alone would have been a 3-year journey. And have you guys ever felt like if I just avoid it long enough, it'll go away? That's what he's doing. He's going, if I just avoid this long enough, maybe it'll go away. Maybe it'll go away. I'm going to do the longest journey I can imagine. So he bought a ticket and went on board. And many scholars, when they read this in the original text, it actually makes it sound like the amount of money he was spending would have been enough to actually purchase the use of the ship entirely and its crew. So like he went and hired this ship and hired its crew, so he had complete control over where it would go. He's not saying even I want to go away. So what does that mean? It would have meant he probably drained his life savings running from this. So he was saying, not only am I trying to get away, I will do anything to get away. I will go to the extreme. So again, it's this extreme. We see the author highlighting these extreme aspects. Like, this is crazy. This is, who would do this? Who would spend this kind of money? Who would be this crazy? Who would be this drastic? Jonah's emotional. He's out there. So he buys this ship. He hops aboard, hoping to escape the Lord by sailing to Tarshish. But the Lord hurled a powerful wind over the sea, causing a violent storm that threatened to break the ship apart. Fearing for their lives, the desperate sailors shouted to their gods for help and threw the cargo overboard to lighten the ship. But all this time, Jonah was sound asleep down in the hold. So the captain went down after him. How can you sleep at a time like this? You ever remember another story where someone was asleep in a hold and other people were panicking? Jesus did something similar. And it's going to fall apart. Fearing for their lives, the desperate sailors began to shout. Sorry, jump back. How can you sleep at a time like this? Get up and pray to your God. Maybe he will pay attention to us and spare our lives. You see, the people that he hired on this ship, they believed in many gods. And their deities often, especially sometimes poorer people, would worship lower level gods. And so they're crying out to lower level deities that would not have been over the cosmos or the weather. And so they're crying out to their gods going, there's a limitation. Wait, who does Jonah worship? Maybe he worships a God who's over the sky. Maybe he worships a God who's actually above and can control the storm. And so they're crying out to their gods. They're getting nothing back. So they're like, who else serves a God who might do something? This would have been their view, their pagan view. And maybe he will pay attention to us and spare our lives. Then the crew cast lots to see which of them had offended the gods and caused the terrible storm. When they did this, the lots identified Joseph as the culprit. Why has this awful storm come down on us? They demanded. Who are you? What is your line of work? What country are you from? What is your nationality? Here they're trying to discover, could Jonah potentially have access to a God who's the God of this storm? And Jonah answered, I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land. So the sailors were terrified when they heard this, for he had already told them he was running away from the Lord. Oh, why did you do it? They groaned. Why did you do it? And we'll get to the next part next week. Well, I want to stop there for a moment, and let's look at this story. And hopefully today we can take something away from this story and actually apply it to our lives and see what God might be trying to teach us through this text. Because believe it or not, at least for me, maybe you can't, I can identify with the disobedient actions of Jonah. I have had many moments where I know there's something in front of me that I ought to do, but I don't want to do. You ever had this? There's something in front of you that you ought to do, but you just don't want to do it. And in fact, today, if I'm being really honest, there's kind of one word I'm preaching on, and I'm preaching on the word disobedience. You want to talk about an ugly word? It just goes down like vinegar. You're like, oh, disobedience. I hate it. I hate the word disobedience. And in fact, I'm just going to let you know, if you want just a really good, feel good, pat you on the back, encourage you, candied apple sermons, don't come during this series, okay? This is not the series for you. It's just not going to be helpful. But if you would actually say, hey, like I'd like to approach this text and be okay with identifying the reality that sometimes I'm Jonah, if I can be okay with the fact that sometimes I'm Jonah, I might really learn something from this series. And I might really be able to be challenged, and I might really be able to grow. I don't just want to come to church and hear content that makes me feel good all the time. I would also enjoy some content personally that challenges my faith. And as I've been studying this text has been challenging me. So I'm going to stand up on here and I'm going to talk about disobedience through the lens of some of the stuff that I feel, some of the things that I struggle with. But disobedience, like when you're a kid or you're in high school, you just dream about the day when you're on your own, because you feel like I can't disobey once I'm my own master, kind of a thing, right? Like once I'm in charge, once I have my own house, right? Your parents say something like, oh, well, as long as you're under my roof, you follow my rules. And my rules determine whether or not you're disobedient. So we get it in our head that once we fully mature and we just become a grown adult at the ripe age of 18 years old, that all of a sudden we no longer can be disobedient. Like we're in charge of our life, we make our own decisions, and I can't be disobedient anymore. But the reality is that over time you start to learn that sometimes your decisions, your choices that maybe you want, maybe you were hoping for when you were under your parents' roof, all of a sudden you start to make those decisions and you're like, oh, they had that rule because that disobedience was actually going to hurt me. That disobedience was actually going to damage me, right? Like I have no self-control when it comes to sugar candy. Like I have none. It is terrible, okay? And so the first moment I'm out of the house, what am I doing? I'm buying as much Sour Patch Kids, Swedish Fish. I mean, I'm living on this stuff. Like Lifesaver gummies. Oh, it's so good. Tomorrow when I'm playing golf, I'm going to put some gummies on ice. I put them on ice, and then they get extra chewy, and then they're like a cool snack, and it's delicious. And you're laughing, but if you golf with me, you'd eat my gummies too. Trust me. And I love gummy candy. You're like, Pastor, you're a grown man with children. Yes! And I love them more today than I did back then, okay? It's a growing relationship, okay? It is, But the disobedience of just eating gummy candies uncontrollably led to a severe consequence of 23 cavities. And you're like, oh, you're exaggerating, like this is satire, Pastor? No. Literally 23 cavities according to the x-rays. 23! So you realize that the obedient step to manage your gummy intake could have saved me a lot of money. But I didn't want to save money. I wanted to eat my gummies. And we do things where we start to think like, I can't be disobedient anymore. I'm a grown adult. But then we start to learn, wait a second, actually, I can be disobedient. I can make the wrong choices. Especially when I start to understand that Jesus doesn't just want us to believe what he said, but actually do what he said. And so if I actually am supposed to be called to do what he said, and he tells me that he doesn't just want me to do this because he demands obedience. He actually believes that if you would obey what he says, your life is going to be blessed, that you're going to get healthy, that things are going to make sense, that you could have a great marriage, that you could be a great spouse, that you could be a great parent, you could be healthy in your finances. He actually wants what's best for you. He's a good father who wants to give good gifts to his children. But just like any father, there's some obedience required. And here, Jonah models disobedience at its finest. Because disobedience, when it comes to God, is the opposite direction. You are never, sometimes people are like, I feel like I'm just a little off course. You're either on course or you're off course. You're either headed to Nineveh or you're headed to Tarshish. That's it. You're either facing your sin and heading straight into sin, or you're facing Jesus and you're heading into grace. You're either heading to Nineveh or you're heading to Tarshish. Well, it's just like a degree or two. How many of you know if you go off course for a single degree over a long period of time, you're way off course? You're either on course or you're off course. And so here we see this, the author's helping us understand that actually so often as humans, we love to go, nope, opposite direction. Nope, actually, I'm going to go to Tarshish. I'm going to go in the opposite direction. But today I want to look at a couple traits that for me, these are things that I see in kids, in teenagers, in young adults, in seniors. I see this across the full gamut of age. And these are things that I often struggle with when I use them sort of like a litmus test of, am I in disobedience? These are some ways, some really practical things that I can look at. And what I found is that when we're in disobedience, the first thing is we know best when we're disobedient. So we start to get this idea in our head that like, no. I know what's best. And like, it's not going to kill me to eat gummy candies. I want them. Whatever the thing is, I know best. I got the right plan. I got the right direction. I want to even come up with my own destiny. I'm going to head in my own location. I know best. Did you know that there is no wiser human on the planet Earth than the person who is convinced that they are right? The person who is convinced that they are right. Oh, they know. And usually I've found that the people that are most convinced that they are right have not studied, have not researched. They probably just read one article. They probably just listened to one blog post. Often we get so convinced that we are right, and then what we do is we get so stuck in that place that we start to drift towards disobedience. Because we're convinced, I got it figured out. I don't need to be challenged. I don't need to grow. I got it. I am the head of my household. I'm the head of my family. I got it figured out. I know what's best. I know what's best for me. In fact, I find so often that when we are in disobedience, we will do everything we can to not admit it. Because I know best. So I'm going to work really, really hard to justify the disobedience, to justify why it was the right decision for me. Have you ever done this? Have you ever done what you know is wrong, but the words that come out of your mouth are telling everyone and yourself why it's right? We do this. We know what's best. We got it figured out. It's getting really complicated, in fact, sometimes to even know what's best. We have to learn to test these things and to be humble with it, right? Like recently, on just a couple sponsored reels on Instagram. This first one got sponsored for me to follow this crazy dude who believes in the carnivore diet, this dude named the Liver King. And he's called the Liver King because he eats raw liver with every single meal. This is a real dude, jacked out of his mind, okay? He's never worn a shirt in his life. I mean, you look at every post, he doesn't believe in shirts. Like this guy, And he's like, all meat. He eats bone marrow. He just carves it right out of the bone, and it's this whole primal living thing, right? And it's like, I watch these videos, and I'm like, yeah, give me steak. Make it bloody. Like, come on, let's eat meat. And then all of a sudden, you watch another video, and there's some lean cut dude going, it's all vegan. It's all vegetables. Only eat salads. Red meat's killing you. You know, this is doing this. And you can watch two guys telling you that they know that they are right with complete polar opposites, and both are producing great results. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? Is it veggies or meat? I'm going to err towards meat, just so you guys know. Your pastor would err towards meat. Other than, I'm like, carnivore diet sounds better than the vegan diet. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not judging anybody on your life decisions, but I like steak. You want to know my love language? My love language is steak. So you want to get to my good side? Just buy me steak. Just to come on, a good gift card. I'll take it. But there's all sorts of these conflicting ideas, but you'll watch as people get so set that that way is right. Some of you guys, even as I unpackaged a little bit of the book of Jonah, maybe that even challenged some of the ways you've approached this text before, and you're like, I don't like this. But do you know something? That when I was studying the book, I got challenged in the way that I approached the book, and I allowed myself to be challenged. Because I never want to stop growing in my understanding of Scripture. I never want to be closed-minded and say, no, that book is never going to tell me that. I would love to learn more. I'd love to study. I would love to study myself approved to teach this word to you. And so I'm going to challenge my thinking. I'm going to challenge my approach, because the moment we know we're right, we stop growing. You stop learning. The person who is convinced they are right is not willing to learn anything else or any new perspective. They have created a finish line for them. Another thing that we see when it comes to disobedience traits that come up is we second thing, we lose faith. We lose faith. As we solidify ourselves as we know best, we choose the wrong course. What ends up happening is there's this small part of us that knows I'm in disobedience, and we start to drift from God. Because we know if I pray to him, he's going to challenge me on this. If I reach out to him, he's going to tell me to make a change, and I'm not ready to make a change. I had a counseling session this week where this person was finally came to the realization, I got to make a change. I got to make a change. And God led them to that place. And they even said, I didn't want to pray because I knew if I prayed, he was going to tell me to stop doing what I was doing, right? You ever been there? I've been there. We start to lose faith because we're drifting from God, and all of a sudden we're going, I'm scared. And all of a sudden, too, you want to know what happens? Church attendance declines. Well, in worship, what if the presence of God shows up and I get convicted? We start to drift. We start to head towards Tarshish. Realize how horrible this is, that ultimately, here's Jonah in the bottom of the boat, and all he has to do, he knows the God who authored the storm. All he has to do is pray. And we know that Jesus was the opposite of Jonah, and he came out on the boat, and he spoke to the storm, and the storm stopped. But here's Jonah. What happens when we live in disobedience is we don't have the faith to be Jesus, to walk out on the boat and speak to the storm and have it be stilled. We actually do what Jonah is, and we hide the fact of the God we serve. Realize Jonah had to be found out by lots because he had no faith to stand and speak to the storm and say, be still. But yet he knew the author of the storm. He could have had the power to speak to the storm, but he had lost his faith. Why? Because he was living in disobedience. But I want to have the faith of Jesus because Jesus says, I can do greater things than him, so I want to be able to walk out on the boat and say, God, silence the storm. I'd rather be on this case side of Jesus than the side of Jonah. But yet so often we find ourselves hiding in the boat, unwilling to pray, low on our faith. And then we even know, right? This is how bad his faith got. We haven't got to this part of the story, but I'm going to out it anyways. We know that rather than praying, he says, throw me overboard. Throw me overboard. I'd rather die than have to pray to the God that I'm being disobedient to. Because what ends up happening is we drift so far from God that actually we start to lie to ourselves, and we feel like, man, actually, maybe God caused this. Maybe this is God's fault. We start to blame God, and we'd rather just lose our life than to cry out to him to be saved. We'd rather lose our life than to actually get back in alignment with what he's calling us to, because it's hard, because it's challenging. So here's Jonah, a prophet, and he has no willingness to pray to the God that he serves. We do this. We lose faith. He didn't get up and pray. Another thing is actually we get really, really selfish. We get selfish. But all this time, Jonah was sound asleep down in the hold, so the captain went down after him. How can you sleep at a time like this? Do you know disobedience is rooted in selfish desire? Disobedience always stems from selfishness. Because once you start to think you know best, you're going to do what feels the best. You're going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to actually do my life this way. I've got this figured out. I've got this figured out. I want what I want. I want what I want. We have a phrase in the Grosso household we say all the time. We say, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Come on, say it with me. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. That is a word for you right now. Come on. You need to receive what you've got. You get what you get. But oh man, I think I throw more fits as an adult than I ever did as a kid, if I'm being really honest. I may not be as outward about it, but inside why did I get this way? Why did they get that? And I got this, right? The selfishness creeps in. And here's Jonah, he's so selfish. He's lost his faith to a level that he'd be so selfish where he doesn't even pray to his God. He's like, I'd rather these men die than me pray to that God. I'm so selfish, I put them in danger. I'm so selfish, I led them into this storm. I am self-serving in this moment. I don't want to be honest. I don't want to be transparent. And the reality is that if you're in disobedience, it probably came because you had selfish desires. You knew what you wanted. To be disobedient to the gospel message of Jesus at its core is to put your needs first, because it's the opposite of what Jesus calls us to. He says, hey, actually in the upside down kingdom, you're to serve, not be served. You're to come under. You're not to lord over. You're supposed to do for others what you wish they would do for you. You're supposed to treat everyone as better than yourself. So when selfishness takes hold, disobedience always follows. It always follows. And it's a sure sign. If you're always focused on how you feel and what you got compared to other people, you're going to start to see yourself walk out in disobedience. So we think we know best. We lose faith, and we get really, really selfish. And as the band comes on up, I want to end with a thought that kind of puts a bow on these three traits. But it's something that God spoke to me that really challenged Renee and I in a tough season. Our first year when we packed up our family and we moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to a church we didn't really know, to a city we'd never been to a hot, hot climate. Come on, you want to get crabby? Go live in the heat. I'm telling you. That's why I was in Atlanta. I'm just sweating. I'm living in an armpit this weekend in Atlanta. It was horrible. It was horrible. And we're in a hot climate. And we're in a place we don't know. We're away from family. Renee's pregnant with a third kid in 3 years. You want to test your faith? Have 3 kids in 3 years. Just watch what that does. You want to build some faith? Have 3 kids in 3 years and watch what that does. Right? We're in this. We're broke. We're trying to find our way around these problems. The youth ministry we inherited was in absolute shambles. It was a horrible mess. One of the worst situations we've walked into, but we knew God had called us there. But yet we kept thinking of how do we get around all these problems? I just want to get to the solution. I just want to get past the pain. I want to get past the friction. I want to get past the tension. So I would get side jobs and work at Domino's or do something to try to make extra money, or I would do these different things, or we'd come up with these ideas, and we were living in stress. And I remember one time I was praying to God, and I'm like, God, come on, show me the way around the problem. Show me the way around the problem. And I heard it so clearly from God. Hey, actually, it's not around, it's through. What I've called you to is Tulsa. What I've called you to, don't you remember? I told you when you interviewed, I told you to raise up the next generation of leaders for Pastor Paul Doherty's vision. You're here to raise up leaders. It's not about you. Don't get selfish. Don't think you know best on the way to fix your finances. I've got things in store. Don't you worry. Come on. Don't get selfish. Don't lose your faith. Are you kidding me? You had enough faith to move here, but you're going to lose faith now? You're going to go to Tarshish now? And he said this word, and it just came alive in me. It's not around. It's through. But the problem is that if we think any pain or discomfort or friction or tension or temptation, that if we're experiencing any of those, it must not be God. Clearly God's not here. I'm experiencing pain. Oh, God's not here, so I got to go around the pain. God's obviously not in the pain. He's around the pain. And so often God goes, I actually just want to meet you in the middle of your pain. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get you to trust me. What I'm trying to do is get you to submit to me. What I'm trying to do is get you to obey. And if you would obey, I'm going to take you through. But on the other side, in time, in due season, it's going to produce a harvest in your life that is so much greater than you could ever imagine. My plans are better. My ways are higher. Would you just do? Would you just trust? Would you just go to Nineveh? Please, just go to Nineveh. I know it sounds crazy. I know they kill people like you there. I know that you don't want them to be saved. I know all these, but would you just go? Would you just go? Oh, but you don't understand, God. Like no one's even celebrating me. No one's even applauding me. And it just feels hard right now. And he says, just go. Go through. Go through. I'm telling you, if you try to go around the problem you're facing right now, the problem's going to come back again. I have one of my greatest fears is not learning the full lesson in the season I'm in, so I have to repeat that lesson later. Some of us have been stuck for decades because we just won't go through it. Some of us have just been stuck for months because we just won't go through it. What is that thing that you keep avoiding? What's that conversation? What's that change? What's that shift you need to make to walk out in obedience? Well, I'm only 1 degree off, Pastor Stan. Well, that's heading to Tarshish. Head to Nineveh. Fully commit to it. Fully commit. Fully commit. I want to leave you with this sentence, and I want you to write this down to remember this message. Please take notes on this. If you don't get anything else, get this. And I've crafted this in a way that helps it stick, so we can remember this. Put it somewhere. A new direction birthed from disobedience will not change God's preferred destination for you. A new direction. Well, I'm going to go to Tarshish. Birthed from disobedience. I'm not going to listen. I'm going to find my own way. I'm going to find my own way to get to my preferred destination. I know where I want to go. I just don't like I don't like his direction. I don't like his path. I don't like his track. When we try to find a new direction and it's birthed from disobedience, it never changes the destination God has for you. He's saying, hey, I've still got the same destination. I need you to go through. I need you to follow my directions. I need you to follow my path. The problem with us coming up with all these new Tarshishes, that's a weird word, Tarshishes. The problem with that is we waste so much time. Now, praise God, we serve a God who says, I'm not finished with you yet. I've still got plans that you can get back on track. The gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. You can't lose it. Man, church, I don't want to waste any more time walking in disobedience, losing my faith, getting selfish and thinking that I know best.